don't know, I wasn't always a big writer and smart aleck. I was an engineer for 10 years as an audio semiconductor manufacturer, blah, 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 blah. I don't even care, you don't have to. And then I got into more of the business development marketing side when they took my function and moved it to India, and I didn't want to move to India. And they said, well, you can go into marketing, that's what we do for people. And in my situation, I really needed some marketing guys like, what? Wait, huh? I really am a marketer, though. You mean I'm not? No, you are. And then there's people who pretend to be like me, and that we end up writing books.
David, this brings up a wonderful chapter in your book where you are recounting a series of performance reviews that one of your managers is giving you.
Right.
And where it ends up, of course, is you go home to your wife and say, we need to institute performance reviews at home. But what I want to ask you about is, at one point in recounting one of these reviews, you say that you thought to yourself, I wonder if I should tell him I have Asperger's. And I wonder if you could talk about your experience being on the spectrum in the workplace, having employers who knew or didn't know, and whether you think it makes a difference to self-identify explicitly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you bring that up, especially coming right off of what Phil was just saying, a brilliant point about, and Temple, don't ruin a good techie. I'm a product of somebody who belonged in the back of a lab and was fine there, and had an opportunity, is the corporate word, an opportunity, to move into more of a, like you were saying, a people role, a management role, where I really had to learn how to engage with people in a way that wasn't horribly off-putting. And you can learn, fortunately, you can learn some things by rote. But when it comes to self-identifying, and a lot of people ask me when I do my speaking engagements, should I disclose? Should I go into the dating scene? Should I go into the job interview and lead with, hey, I'm autistic, I've got Asperger's? It's like, no, you wouldn't lead with, hey, I'm allergic to, I've got food sensitivities. Like, that's not what you introduce yourself with. It's just part of your composition, and that gets revealed over time. And you can be very proud of your neurological heritage, but you don't need to bring it front and center every time. After I wrote the book, and being an author doesn't pay, so I had to go back and with my tail between my legs, go back and get another corporate engineering gig for a couple of years, and then I quit so I'm broke again, but very happy. And my manager hired me. She knew about my book. And she had, because nowadays every employer just Googles you right away, and what comes up is like, I'm hard to be with. And she wanted to know more. And I had gotten the job because I knew somebody at the company. I'd done great work for them before because I have Asperger's. You do great work for people when you have Asperger's, and he really emphatically recommended me. She Googled me, and first thing she did is she wanted to sit me down and get her parameters on me. So she knew autism. Oh, you've got that A word. You're like that Sheldon Cooper, aren't you? Now.
Oh, well, he said he's not Asperger's, but that's not true.
Right, yeah. You need some self-awareness, I'll tell you what, man, that's, when she said those words, I knew that I wasn't Dave Finch, qualified candidate. I was Sheldon Cooper, and how am I going to contain this guy once he's in the company? So then when I was working there, I had to take a personality profile. And it turns out I'm an Int J or INP.
Myers-Briggs, good luck.
Yes, yeah, Myers-Briggs says...
What did they say?
They called my employer and said, head for the hills. So this guy's out of his... I had a really hard time taking that test because I could see both sides of all the answers. I was like, this is pigeonholing me into some pretty unfair parameters.
Sounds like you were at my lunch meeting today with the engineers arguing
What you
about
need
why am I see both sides.
She called me and she goes, you've had a week to complete this, why isn't it done? I was like, this test is a joke. Like, I'm all of these.
What you do is go on Google Scholar and look up all the journal articles on the Myers-Briggs, and then you know how to fill it out.
PhD.
Oh, Google Scholar's wonderful.
That's right. I'm living proof that you can fail a personality test. Ask my wife, Kristen. She'll tell you. My experience, certainly in the corporate world, wasn't a good fit. And I realize there are cameras rolling, and I might need a corporate job again someday, so just employers, take it with a grain of salt. This is all smoke and mirrors. I'm really corporate material. That's why I'm wearing a suit. Actually, no, I'll get to your thing, but I really...
Okay, we're off the rails now.
Yeah, that's what happens. In Asperger's panel, it's like you ask an Aspie what time it is, and they'll tell you how to build a watch. But the reason I'm wearing a suit is because I'm acutely aware of the dynamics of the panel. So we have Phil McKinney. Hi, I just, did my thing in Chicago, and then I ran HP. And then when I was tired of literally running HP, this enormous institution, I just decided to run another huge, massively influential company while I was writing thousands of articles and being a prolific, creative genius, changing the way people think about neurodiversity in the workplace. And I'm here tonight. And then, and after this, I'm going to go figure out how we can colonize Venus, and it'll be no big thing, and I'll write some more books. And then Dr. Grandin, who I have no business even sitting next to. She's so brilliant. And okay, so I once made a joke, and this is not true, but I know the people in the crowd with Asperger's will understand this. I once made a joke that Asperger's is autism for people who do things in half measures, and I was making fun of myself. But when I look at myself with Temple, I'm literally a tenth of what Temple is as a person. So Temple is autistic, enormously successful, changed the way that our relationship with livestock and the way that we treat animals, which is a tremendous contribution to the world. HBO made a picture about her, and she has multiple novels, or multiple books out. I'm Asperger's, like not quite autistic. I have written a book, and anybody can write a book. It's really not that hard. I wrote a book, and HBO...
I looked it up. It's got good Amazon reviews.
Thank you. This is important.
Yeah.
Amazon karma is a good thing. And 3/4 of the reviews were written by Phil McKinney and Temple. I didn't pay that. And then HBO made an award-winning picture about Temple and her contributions to the world. HBO almost bought a show from me, and 2 months ago said, actually, we don't want to make this show about you.
Right, can you see the marketing meeting when they were trying to sell the suits on making a movie about an autistic professor who designs slaughterhouses?
How do you say no to that?
Well, that's basically what it's about.
That's gold.
The other thing that's really important is the producer of that movie is Emily Gerson Sains, the mother of an autistic child, and that's one of the reasons why it came out so well, because Emily Gerson Sains had to get the right people together to make that movie.
And she had a sensibility for
Absolutely.
what it really entails, what the lifestyle is on both sides of the spectrum when you are the person with autism. And
it took a while to find the right people to do it.
And that really speaks to your question. Steve, full circle. I take notes about conversations as they're happening for a reason. But that's what it is in a corporate setting, the ability, as Phil mentioned very astutely, he's like, yeah, tell me about being astute. I'm Phil McKinney. Like, you're so smart. That's like sketching a picture of a giraffe and saying to Picasso, like, you're a good painter. That's really good. But in a corporate setting, being able to identify what that talent and contribution will be, and letting that talent grow and nourish that talent to be what it needs to be without putting other expectations on it is a very tricky balancing act. There's two sides of the employment coin. There's the one where it's identifying that talent and knowing what to do with a very, sometimes very difficult person to manage on your hands.
Seeing too many smart kids just going down a really bad path and not learning any basic skills and not having good outcomes. And then the gray hairs that was working with the millwrights, they've got great careers because they took welding at school and they had paper routes and learned how to work.
And they know what it meant to be an employee.
That's right.
And
absolutely.
That is something that starts at home.
That's right.
And if you don't have the wherewithal to instill that at home, that's why we need programs like what's happening at Temple Grandin School and some other places where you learn these. It is as much as we would love to live in a society that makes it very easy for people with autism to engage in a workplace in a way that's very comfortable for them, that would be wonderful. In the meantime, it is truly incumbent upon the individual with autism to know how to be an employee at that company.
You've got to learn how to work.
One of the things that you describe in your book that, again, is sort of jumping back from the employer side to the employee side is you're pretty honest about some behaviors that would be head scratchers to some managers.
Right.
And
Like what kind of behaviors? What behaviors do you do that drive managers crazy?
I like Temple. You are awesome. Okay, so there's driving my managers crazy, and then there is driving my wife crazy.
All right, what's about driving the managers
Let's
crazy?
start with the managers, because
Okay.
that's in the spirit of the discussion this evening. Driving my managers crazy are the big things. There are three major things. One is my synchronicity to my schedule, not theirs. So they believe it's very important to have an employee at his desk from 8 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And I said, well, I don't do my best work from 8 to 6. I do my best work in these insane, and you've seen this day in and day out, every day of your career. I guarantee Phil has seen this. I do insanely good work in bursts, and then I need to get the hell out of Dodge and come back in a couple more hours and just go burst mode, and then
Now
leave.
can you work with, have your own schedule, but then have a deadline for project completion?
Yes.
If I was a manager, I could live with that. Say, okay, now 3 weeks from now, it needs to be done.
That's because you're a reasonable person.
Yeah.
It is.
You need to do that.
It's really important for the company culture too, because when I say I would never go in, realistically.
I can understand you can't do serious programming in that horrible cubicle farm.
But
you go in there for at least one afternoon a week just to talk to other people.
People need to see you, and
That's right.
most importantly, kids, your manager has to see you. You don't go into the office to get work done. You go into the office to
You
get
make sure
seen.
you go in the office when he's there.
Yes. When the manager's not there, then you get your work done. But when the
go to the
manager's
secretary and get his schedule.
That's what I would get. Make sure you all have a Google Calendar and you see when your managers, because I don't want to sound so cynical, but I've found that in the bigger the corporation gets, the more important it is for you to not only get the work done, this is what I was saying before about Temple, to not only get the work done, but know the gamesmanship of the environment that you're in. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I personally no longer wanted to tolerate the gamesmanship of getting on the train every morning, so I was there by 9, and
Oh, no. There's no way you're going to get the serious work done if you do that
No.
train 5 days a week.
Right, and they got their best work from me when I was on my terms. And I'll tell you what, it drove my manager nuts, but then she couldn't say anything about it because the work that was handed to her was phenomenal.
Always document it and keep copies of it.
That's John Elder Robeson has a phenomenal word that I love. He says you have to be choosable, and that is life. You have to be choosable to partners, employers, everybody. And there's college can participate, I think, at the university level, collegiate level, in two ways. One is, yes, they can be educating their staff and their other students, the student bodies, in a more organized way on what autism and Asperger's really is in terms of the positive traits, the attributes, and some of the things that come along with it.
And the other thing is they've got to do career relevant internships. We got to make sure they pound in these working skills before they graduate.
Career internships is massive because not only it exposes you to the realities of the workplace, but you meet people, and getting a job and keeping a job is a social endeavor. And maybe we don't have always the best social instincts. The other ways that I think colleges can prepare students is by, a lot of these kids, going back to the situation you were describing where a child has an IEP and there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on until age 18. Well, age 18, your IEP goes away and your needs don't. If you are prepared from age young to go into college to be independent, we see so many bright kids fall flat on their face because there's no transition, there's just a gap. Yep. And it's like learn how to fly, kick. Hi.
Thank you all for being here. You've covered so many important topics, including what it means for employers to employ neurodiverse employees. You all talked about the burden that employees with neurodiverse employees are carrying now, kind of as we're in this in-between stage with people becoming aware of what's going on before we reach full acceptance. So my question is, we talked about employer, we talked about employee, we talked about mentors, which I think are really important, but we didn't really talk very much about peer-to-peer relationships in the workplace. And I'm curious about your thoughts on what our responsibility in the community and coworkers is beyond just general acceptance.
What a thoughtful question. I shouldn't make any judgments. You're a very thoughtful person. That's not exactly fighting words, but that's really wonderful to ask. One of the things I noticed the most was in both my corporate jobs, the people who let me be me and didn't. I always felt like there was the cool jockey, and I don't mean to be picking on sales guys, but in my experience, it was always the fratty kind of sales guys who didn't understand why I was.
Don't put sales guys in charge of engineering. Very dangerous.
No, that's an explosive situation.
Well, and I was involved in some projects where there were gigantic engineering messes because of a sales guy in charge of engineering.
Yep.
Due to confidentiality, I cannot go into detail on it.
Just change the names.
On. Well, a sales guy tried to run a construction project and run engineers, build stuff in 5 seconds. It did not work.
No, because they want the product out, and
there was no way to do it on the schedule they wanted. They made super expensive, gigantic mistakes, and I'll just leave it at that. And the sales guy that was running a job wouldn't listen to the engineers.
Yeah.
I was involved in that project, and it was a gigantic mess.
And on that's the kind of team where you're not going to get a lot of empathy because the team environment doesn't promote it.
And this guy's so social, he goes on and gets another job after really making this gigantic screw-up.
He can get any job he wants afterwards because he's so good at it.
He's so social. He's a salesman after all.
See, it's not just me.
I mean, this actually happened. I can't say
believe
where it was.
But I case in point, I started wearing yoga pants.
Where is this going?
It gets interesting when I stop wearing yoga pants. I started wearing yoga pants last year because my wife said, gee, you're so uncomfortable in these work clothes and you're grouchy all the time, and it's really for her sake. She hates it when I'm grouchy. She's like, why don't you go buy some yoga pants? So I took her up on it and I bought yoga pants for men, and they're tailored to look like chinos. They look like slacks, but they're made out of stretchy yoga pants, and I could do lunges in them. You'd never know. And when people found out that these were yoga pants, I was very proud of it. And I said, everybody, hey, those are really nice looking pants. Where'd you get them? I'm like, these are yoga pants, and I got them from Athleta. It's like a company for women. And they're like, nah. And I showed them the tag. There's the camp of people who use that as artillery against me, right? Like, oh, there's Finch with his, and that was a little bit alienating. And then there were the people who were like, that's brilliant. You mean you're comfortable all the time? And to answer your question, it can start with being the person who says, that's an interesting way that you're doing it, but you don't enable an idiot. And if I was wearing yoga pants and not producing, go work Athleta. But to Temple's very, very good point, I had a portfolio that I could show too. So I could come in a kilt. And
then you always keep that up to date and keep hard copies at home.
What's a piece of advice you'd give to employers who want to work with neurodiverse employees? And what's a piece of advice you give to people on the spectrum making their way or hoping to make their way in the work world?
In the work world. So the advice I would give to any employer, spectrum or not, would be like Phil. just call him. No, really get to know your workforce for their strengths, not for the parameters that the colleagues have put on them. Make it about their portfolio and measure them on what gets done, not how you think they should have gotten it done, barring anything like not legal. But also, you're not a doormat, you have a company to run. This isn't a sheltered workshop, after all, it's a company. And so make sure that it's very clearly conveyed, hey, this is some give and take. These are some things I'm gonna extend to you, maybe some license that you don't have in other companies, but pony up, like we need the results. And I think both of you will go very far in that relationship. I think my advice, and I hope you listen with open hearts and minds with this, my advice to young people and their parents trying to get going in the work world. First, understand, be exposed to a lot of things so that you find what it is that you love to do. The thing that puts you in a state of flow, and the thing that if you do it for 6 hours, you look up and you say, it's 9:30, that's what you should consider doing. And don't worry about how you're gonna monetize it, just do it. Because the universe, to sound like somebody from Boulder, the universe responds.
I just want
What an odd thing to say to a town
Boulder.
full of people from Boulder.